Hey everyone. So in my previous video I talked about practical application of function or method overloading, but I missed few points. So in this video I'll quickly cover those few points. So let's start. Okay, so the first point is building public APIs or library. If you are building any public API or library which is going to be used by a lot of people, now if you want to make some changes to those libraries or APIs, you cannot directly change the existing APIs, because if you do that, the consumers of those APIs will have to make changes to their code base, because they will be using your existing APIs, and in the newer version of your API you are planning to make changes to your existing APIs. So in case they upgrade their versions, the previous version will not be compatible with the old code base. One way of handling this case is backward compatibility, that you can create new APIs, you can expose new APIs, as well as you can also support the existing APIs. But at some point in time, the backward compatible APIs will be removed. So the people or the consumers who will be using those APIs will have to make changes at some point. I mean, it will be a long time, but ultimately they will have to make changes. So a better way of doing it is applying function or method overloading in your APIs. Whenever you are creating a new API, you can simply overload the existing API and you can expose it. So people who would like to use the old API will use the old API, and people who would like to use the new function or API will use the new one. So this is how function overloading or method overloading comes into play. Let me show you an example. So in java.lang package, there is a class math class. So as you can see in this math class, this max function has been overloaded 4 times. There are 4 different implementations of this max function. The first one is taking 2 arguments, integer. The second one is taking 2 arguments of type long. Third one is taking argument of type float, and fourth one is taking argument of type double. So this is method overloading. Java is a public library. It is a language that is being used throughout the world by many developers. So if Java API developers have designed a particular method, and if in future there is a new requirement, so to fulfill the new requirement, they will be using the concept of function overloading or method overloading. Let's say in future there is again a new requirement that instead of finding max between 2 arguments, we have to find max between 3 or more than 3 arguments. So for fulfilling that particular requirement, again the Java API developer team will again overload the max function and will create a new max function that will take 3 arguments or more than 3 arguments of different types. So they will again be using the concept of function overloading. Let's take another example. So Hazelcast again is a public library. It is a distributed in-memory data grid. So in this example you can see that there are 2 different implementations of creating a Hazelcast instance. The first method is where you cannot pass the config object. So Hazelcast instance will be created using the default configuration. The other overloaded method is in which you can pass the config object and you can create Hazelcast instance using that particular configuration. So this is again an example of method overloading which Hazelcast API team has used. So as of now there are these 2 implementations. Again in future, let's say after few months or an year, let's say there is a new requirement, so Hazelcast team will again overload a new method and will introduce different parameters to fulfill the new requirement. So this is the point that I missed in my previous video. I hope I'm clear with my examples. The third example is the same. This point I have already covered in my first video, which is you can use method overloading or function overloading in your own code base. Let's say you are inside your own code base, you have created a method and you have used it at multiple places. So that particular method has many references. Now in case there is a new requirement, and so you have 2 choices. First, you can make changes to your existing method, but if you do that, you will have to make changes to all the references from where that method has been invoked. And the second choice is method overloading. So I've covered this point in my previous video as well. Just to give a quick recap, I've added this point also in this particular video. So this is the example. You can see that we have two different salary method implementation. So assuming that initially our requirement was just to calculate the salary based on the experience of a person or an employee, but later we have a different requirement of calculating the salary based on experience and location. So we will implement, or we will overload the previous method. So I hope now you are able to understand the practical application of function overloading or method overloading from these two videos, this video and the previous video. So that's all for this video.